It's my eintlik amazing, want ek het nou, terwyl ek hier sit en ek luister na almal van julle, dan vat ek so notas, en ek het seker 3 of 4 bladsye neergeskryf, net om te sê, oorie, maar wat hierdie ou sê, link hier met dit, en hierdie ou wat sê, hier link hier met dit, so ek sal sê, as teen die einde kans het, julle het eintlik die ding geskryf, as ek dit so kan stel, so ek wil net vir julle, as ek kan vra, wil ek hom in Engels aanbied, want dit is nou 'n Engelse presentation, soos ek kan gee, maar ek wil eers 'n bietjie agtergrond gee. So, die oorspronklike ding wat ek begin, as ek hom, hierdie ding is geskryf, of bymekaar gestel vir 'n kollektief, soos, maar as ek byvoorbeeld na my gemeenskap toe gaan, of as ek na 'n besigheid toe gaan. Want die gedagte wat ons gehad het, en ons het lankal die ding brainstorm rondom die Universiteit van die Suide en die wiel, hoe pas ek dit in die wêreld toe? So hierdie is 'n voorbeeld soos dit. So gewoonlik wat die opskrif is how do we change physical reality? Want ek meen vir hulle is dit belangrik. Maar vir die gesprek van vandag het ek nou nogal juist gevoel, maar hoe praat die ooste met die weste? Nou jy kan dit ook sien, daar's 2 verskillende oostes. Die ooste, sal ek sê, as ek nou die woord narratief kan gebruik, hoe hulle dink, en die weste, hoe kan daai 2 met mekaar praat? En dit is ook heeltyd die gesprek van versoening en hoe werk dit? Ek meen, hoe kan ons dit doen? En dit sal dan die fisiese realiteit verander, as ek dit so kan stel. Alright. So then, okay, ek is nou nie die beste Engelse spreker nie, maar ek sal nou oor dit kom, as ek dit so kan stel. So then, how does the East and the West discuss God? And what we want to do is basically, if I go to anyone else, in any facet, discipline or anything, how can I start seeing him as a specific identity or a word, and we start discussing, and now we're talking about the original language that was before, and how does that translate, and how does it build the temple that we want to build? You know, that's what we're after here, right? So how do we get from this, I can say, dystopian state to, you know, where we want to be? And if I speak to a business, typically what you would see is, if you can see a stream that's flowing, and this stream changes as it goes, and you as a business need to be positioned inside the middle of the stream, because you want to sort of get the market from it, if I could say like this. But the moment you get misaligned with the contextual environment, the stream changes and you go straight on. And eventually it gets shallower and shallower and shallower, it struggles, you cannot find work, and eventually you hit land. So you want to get to that place, and what I want to state here, and it's really what we all state, is we take the super tube. And the super tube, the word comes from really Johan. I mean, we had a small group discussing the Gees van Zachariah, the spirit of Zachariah. And he one day went past the super tube, and he posted this, and this just became a name, just a practical name that you can use in the world out there. And it's also what it is, because you are here in the beginning, you need to take this leap of faith, and then you go almost down this rabbit's hole. And on the other side, you don't really know what happened, but you are transformed. And you're just this different person. I mean, you would know that when you are in these groups, that's what happens to you. You cannot really explain it. It's not like you comprehend the concepts that's here, but there's another thing that happens in you that when you are on the other side, it's just different. Okay. So this is the thought process. We'll discuss the following. So understanding of the fundamentals. How do we play? How do we accelerate the process? And then the process will follow. Then I take them through a specific process that captures the initial mindset. We take the super tube, and then we see, okay, what's your mindset now? It's all about mindsets. You will see, you know, Babylon is mindsets, concepts, mindsets that we get stuck in. The process, benefits and inputs, and just admin, that if we now participate in the future. Now, I've just completed this one with my own community, Lazonia, where I live is Lazonia. This is the most distorted and fragmented community that you can get. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but we managed to come to something. Now it's the issue of what do we do with this identity. It's like you discover your identity in the beginning, but now what do I do with it, you know? Okay, fundamentals. So I'm going to talk a little bit. So this is what Gandhi said. A sign of a good leader is not how many followers you have, but how many leaders you create. So the times have changed. If we talk about the industrial age to the conceptual age. So I talk, business language, if I could say it like this. The industrial age was in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, right? And typically, now we are in the conceptual age. So I want to see, and you can see how that first thing that Gandhi said is really translating to, the space where we are now. It's not about me. It's about how many others I can bring into their identity. You can see, the underlying space that needs to be created for others to become leaders. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Please give comments and so forth if you want to. So in the industrial age, it was about this. I'm the leader. I have the vision. You guys, please follow me. And that's how we go. And that worked. But the problem is that we are in a very complex and dynamic environment. The stream changes much more rapidly now. One guy or an exco of 6 people doesn't have enough, how can I say, knowledge, to determine direction of the collective. The collective is the leadership now, the complete collective. Because there's not a permanent position to leadership, supposedly. That's why they struggle so much with the definition of leadership. There's just the front runner, what's the Afrikaans, the voorloper, for a specific task and position. But the moment the situation changes, someone else is that. There's not a status connection to that. In the industrial age, it was about doing. To-do list, task list. I feel good if I've completed these things. I have made it, if I can say it like this. It's about efficiency. How many things and how well can I do it? I just want to get through this list and then everything will be okay. I will have enough money and we can live all right. In the conceptual age that God is now starting to, and remember that He wil voltrek hierdie goeders. He is pushing all of this in a direction where even in the business environment and other environments, you will have no choice to conform to the rules and stuff that we are realizing right now. You will have no choice. Because if you think in the previous way, there will just be no existence for you. It is just moving that way. That is a picture of a fractal. It's basically how this collective comes together and you get emergence. I'll give you the definition of emergence now. It's about being. So if you are in a business or in a collective, and the way that you are, you can come up with a solution in 10 seconds that will surpass a guy who works 10 hours a day doing certain tasks. So even in the business environment, that's how it works now. You would see that all these unicorns and big companies comes from people that has the ability to do that and see it. It's about the ability to see. And that's what we're also doing here, right? And then about efficacy. It's about doing the right thing. It's not about doing things quick, but it's about being almost like a sniper and carefully selecting, I see this is what needs to happen, this is what I want to be, this is what needs to be, and I go for that specific thing. That's what it's about. So you would see that in the business environment, the knowledge half-life is decreasing. So what is valid today is in the 70s was valid for a long time. But today it's not the case. Tomorrow or in 5 years from now, the concept that we have and the way that we operate is not valid. It just gets disrupted. It doesn't work like that. So you can see where this is moving. It moves to a constant state of being in the now where everything is constantly changing, right? So it is ushering us into a process where get away from your fixed belief systems and moral reality, but start understanding that even in your work life and your personal life and how you deal with your community, the morals of reality is changing continuously, okay? And then emergence needs to go up. Now, emergence definition is in philosophy, systems theory, science, and art. Emergence occurs when an entity is observed to have properties its parts do not have on their own. It means that if I look at 5 of us, they all have specific identities. But if they come together and they follow a specific process, let's call it the super tube or University of the South, something new comes out of that. We can maybe even see the Epos word. Let's see what's that in English. Something new develops out of that, and that changes everything. The E word. Then some fundamentals. The invisible determines the visible. I mean, very few people doesn't, in the world out there, they don't see this because they're so busy with the visible. So I want to give you some examples. Here's typical academics, what they say is performance factors. So you have the visible stuff, experience, knowledge, maybe skills-based behavior, that influence 10% of the behavior, where the rest in terms of values, motivations, perseverance, resilience, influence or makes it 90% of that. It's just an example. It's the iceberg story, and you will see the iceberg a little bit later, all right? Then the other thing, I think we've discussed this before, but the reticular activating system is this conditioned stimulus that we have in our brain biologically. So it sits here at the back of the brain. So it takes in from all your sensory perception you have, like, for example, the eye, touch and pain, and the ears. And I think it's someone from, who said this, Leani, said the only thing that this bypass is smell. And it's then quite interesting that Zacharia works with reuk and smell, okay? Very, very, So what this happens, your conscious mind can only handle, 100 bits per second of a certain information. But through your eye, it's 10 or 100 times or 1,000 times more. So the only way you're going to stay sane is by that going through a filter, right? Now that filter is your conditioned reality that you have experienced from whenever. And I would almost say from Adam's time. All the narratives and models of reality that created from there, what was created from there, probably sits in you, okay? If you think that Adam and Eve, what's the first thing that they did? They get leaves and stuff to cover themselves, okay? And that is still a narrative for us today, is it not? You can watch people in the way that they behave, talk, discuss anything. You would probably find almost in every sentence, there is something that says in there, please cover me, please accept me, please, it's just there. Don't judge me. You can, in the finest way, it is there. Whereas I'm starting to think that Zacharia is the opposite. You must bring your broken self, but we'll get to that a little bit later. The other one is this particular video of, should I play it for you, on quantum mechanics, how that works. It's about 4 or 5.
And here we are, the granddaddy of all quantum weirdness, the infamous double slit experiment. To understand this experiment, we first need to see how particles, or little balls of matter, act. If we randomly shoot a small object, say a marble, at the screen, we see a pattern on the back wall where they went through the slit and hit. Now, if we add a second slit, we would expect to see a second band duplicated to the right. Now, let's look at waves. The waves hit the slit and radiate out, striking the back wall with the most intensity directly in line with the slit. The line of brightness on the back screen shows that intensity. This is similar to the line the marbles make. But when we add the second slit, something different happens. If the top of one wave meets the bottom of another wave, they cancel each other out. So now there is an interference pattern on the back wall. Places where the two tops meet are the highest intensity, the bright lines, and where they cancel, there is nothing. So, when we throw things, that is, matter, through two slits, we get this, two bands of hits. And with waves, we get an interference pattern of many bands. Good so far. Now, let's go quantum. An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. Let's fire a stream through one slit. It behaves just like the marble, a single band. So, if we shoot these tiny bits through two slits, we should get, like the marbles, two bands. What? An interference pattern. We fired electrons, tiny bits of matter through. But we get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles. How? How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. But physicists are clever. They thought, maybe those little balls are bouncing off each other and creating that pattern. So, they decide to shoot electrons through one at a time. There is no way they could interfere with each other. But after an hour of this, the same interference pattern is seen to emerge. The conclusion is inescapable. The single electron leaves as a particle, becomes a wave of potentials, goes through both slits, and interferes with itself to hit the wall like a particle. But mathematically, it's even stranger. It goes through both slits, and it goes through neither. And it goes through just one, and it goes through just the other. All of these possibilities are in superposition with each other. But physicists were completely baffled by this. So they decided to peek and see which slit it actually goes through. They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of two bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched. And it was here that physicists stepped forever into the strange, never world of quantum events. What is matter? Marbles or waves? And waves of what? And what does an observer have to do with any of this? The observer collapsed the wave function simply by observing.
So the way, the framework, the models of reality, the narrative that you look through, determines the reality. And it relates to the point that we made in terms of the witness. You know, the place where the witness stands is how reality is going to be. Because God put us here as witnesses, right? So if our witness is completely the opposite reality, then that's what will be. And it's now proven in science. So it's quite interesting. Then some more fundamentals. In terms of manifested objects and non-manifested. So manifested objects, for this I want to put it in here. So there we have planet Earth. We have people. We have man-made objects. We have emotions. We have concepts. And we can put ideas there. All of these are manifested stuff. Right? So we can see, that's the first concept. The process to unveil an individual. Yeah, so I'm not always sure why I'm so embarrassed about these pictures, but I used a picture like Diana, which is a bride, which is veiled, a veiled identity, and now I'm introducing the concept of now. And I'm going to demonstrate to you later on why I think it's the key to having this discussion and having this verzoening, this reconciliation between all people. You go through, you live in the now to remove all models of reality, and then you have the true identity of the unveiled bride. And if I put the previous concept, the previous slide, and this slide together, it's going to look like this. So we have the non-manifested and the manifested objects, right? Then inside this manifest objects, we have the collective model of reality. Okay? From Adam, the way everything was created, all the ideas in the mind, everything up until now, it determines a specific way of thinking. And in there is social contagion. So there it says, the evidence shows that we inherit and transmit behaviors, emotions, beliefs, and religions, not through rational choice, but contagion. And contagion is the price basically where you give someone else, it's like a sickness, not in this definition, but it's you transfer it. So socially, your way of thinking sort of transmits to another way of thinking, like the parents' way of thinking transmit to the children's way of thinking. And it just grows from there. And it's coming from a very far place back, okay? And just realize here that you take on these without deciding it, almost, right? This whole thing is upheld by fear on focus on the past and the future. And then within that we have an individual, and in that individual we have the individual's fear, we have the individual's manifested objects, and we have the individual's ability to connect to the non-manifested. So now the question is, how do you change it? In terms of individual, how do we change the collective model of reality? And that you can say, well, it's the now portal, or something like this. We discussed this before. So an individual in that particular collective operates in the now of en vandag. That then brings a new way of understanding, a new model of reality in this particular moment. That is then transferred to the collective, and slowly the collective starts changing, right? Just quickly, the background on top of this. I mean, so in my community that I have, you know, in terms of being fragmented, you have white, black, you have Christians, you have New Age, you have, I believe there's a Sangoma, there's a Freemason, there is, I mean, it's just ridiculous. All the different ways of thinking and models of reality that do exist. And from what I experience and the way that it works, it's impossible to convince or to talk to one another from a narrative point of view. Because the moment you put one narrative against another narrative, that's when you have war. So if you talk about war being discussed every day, like, you know, the national anthem, that's a narrative. So you have guys that has a narrative that has a history and emotional connection to the national anthem, the old national anthem. And now you have someone else that has the opposite narrative on thinking that this is connected, that injured or wounded me 30 or 40 years or 50 years ago. And now it's not really about the national anthem. It's not about that. It's about these narratives that stand against one another. Emotion connected and all of that's good. So that is the problem. So how do you play being in the now? So I'll see if I can make some constantly, because it's only in the now. In the now, from my understanding, is where you almost sit together with God in darkness, and suddenly there is this concept that appears, which is now light, which is a manifested object. You understand what I'm saying? So it's not, you don't sit in one of the narratives and then be in the now. You sit in the darkness with God, and then together you create this new idea or concept that needs to be applied now. Huh? So the new way of thinking is not another narrative or concept, or looking for another narrative concept that I can cling to, that, okay, no, this is now the new recipe. It's not that. The new way of thinking is moving from the narratives to between the narratives, which is the darkness with God, where you sit, which is in the now. That also takes you from the place into the fear of God. Because if you are in that space, you're like the sparrow, where you don't plan, it's not about these things, you just sit here and you bring what is required. And if you sit in that space, do you think that you will be able to reconcile? Of course you can, because you're not connected to one of these. Yes, and that is what I realized. What you teach me now, Haggai, is the story of being in the now and sitting in the darkness. And then Zechariah comes and he brings the identity. Those two that work like that. So if you want reconciliation or go to someone and that I believe is what the super tube is then about. If you do the super tube, you throw away the narratives. I don't care what they are. Even, it's amazing then, because all of us have good ideas, right? And you always want to bring the good idea. That's obviously bad, and this is now the good idea. But even that good idea, you must chuck that one as well. That's not necessarily applicable here right now, because it normally comes from a bad idea, right? A good idea is how a bad idea shouldn't have been, It's that effect. It's just the opposite, exactly, but it's in actual fact, it's the same thing. It's just a different color of, die buitekant van die boekie lyk anders. That's what it is. So just 3 important factors. Where is your mind, your motivation, and focus of your effort? So more or less, not right and wrong, but I mean, gives you an idea. So if your mind is, like on a lilo, and you're floating with the stream, like if we talk about South Africa, and you buy a braai, and it's not good, and you discuss, it's not good. What are you doing? You're on that mind stream, and it's easy. There's no energy for me to get on that stream and just float. That's what I do. Instead, you want to be surfing the waves on top of these concepts. You always need to be aware and wake up and to see, okay, here's this particular concept. They can swallow you like this. Passion and motivation. Don't.
Kan jy onderbreek?
Please.
Wat ek sal maar Afrikaans doen. Die surf, dis nou so nice want ek dink dan daaraan. Dit is 'n beeld wat God gebruik het met hierdie vloede in Mosambiek. En dit is wat by die getuienis daaroor gesê het. Want almal sê maar hoekom vloed, ek bedoel dit so in Mosambiek en al die skade is so. En die getuienis wat uit gekom het is dat God sê maar wat jy nodig om te leer hoe om te surf wanneer die tsunami kom.
Exactly. You need to surf the concepts and the narratives. Be on top of them. Exactly.
So met ander woorde, hoekom is al daai mense sterf? Is sodat ons op 'n plek kan kom wat ons nie meer langer op die daai lou lê nie, dat ons kan soos jy sê, surf op die oomblik.
The same with your motivation, your passion, your same. It's don't get stuck within the idea. Again, this is just an idea. It was a creation that happened. It's not you. Okay? The moment you identify with something like that, it becomes you, and then you start drawing boundaries and segregate. You need to run on top of the clouds in terms of these concepts and ideas and so forth. And less about doing stuff and more about being. How do you play? So how does the now look like? So I just put in the system, you are in a state of flow in the moment or in the zone. It's extremely alert. You are aware of your current surroundings, meaning that there's extreme awareness. Now, even on the physical level, but also on the spiritual level. All of these, it's about having your eyes opened and to see what's happening here. Not in your mind, busy with a problem, out of fear typically, what needs to be solved. Otherwise, I won't make it. You are holding a space for others. It's not about you. You see, this is amazing how Haggai, ek het nou eerslik nou besef, Haggai is dit. Dit is hierdie storie van in die nou te wees. How does it not look like? Fear of tomorrow, trapped in mind streams, Lilo. You are busy with your life story. You come to someone, you tell them your life story. Let's have a discussion here. Or Malema, whoever, whatever collective comes to say, listen, this is my life story, you've heard me, and this is why I'm doing this now. That's not now. Okay? Or the other way around. You elevate yourselves in subtle ways. the drive to improve yourselves in any way. That was your point earlier. The moment you are in a space where you want to improve, you're not in the now. You're not. So you want to cover yourself because you're not good enough, any of those. It is the opposite how this thing works. So this is just normally an exercise. What we do is, what is your narrative? So I will ask them, okay, what is your narrative? Because it's so easy for us to, so let examples mine. The economic environment is tough and I'm trapped. So let me tell you honestly now, I'm working at this group in certain scenario and I do feel trapped. Because there's no way that I can just, with the income I get from, step out of there like this and go into someone else. So I have this narrative that I am trapped. But in the now, I'm not supposed to have that narrative. And then somehow, if it needs to change, it will change, right? But you get many people that wants to do this process, and then they cannot wait to bring their good idea. You know? There's still their narrative that they must bring. It's not about that.
They're stuck in themselves.
Exactly. Now throw it away. All right. These are just the exercise we can do in terms of to be in the now. But the way that I can explain it is like we said, you're between concepts. So if I say the word to you now, and I say now again, between that space, did you think of something? No. So you were not trapped in a specific narrative or any way like this. Now there's other ways of doing it and so forth, but many people think that, now it's just this, concept that I need to think about. It's not a concept. It is a state of being that you need to be in. Yeah. Then typically out of that being in the now, and that's what we believe is hearing God's voice, right? Being in that still moment, and suddenly you have this impetus or concept or idea that comes in, and that's God's voice. Now that's actually Zachariah then, that comes in and talk to your identity, right? While you're being in Haggai, right? This is just a practical way. So what I encourage the group then to do is, okay, see if you can be in this space. Now I don't care whether you are the Sangoma or whatever. If my understanding here is the moment you are in the now, you will hear from God, not other places. If I can say like, this is the whole crux of where this is going. And on that basis, I can start having a super tube with you. Because I know that if you are in that space, that you will not bring something here that's not from God. Now, it's not going to be perfect, right? Like none of us are perfect. But that's also the mechanism of Zachariah, where you bring your brokenness. It's not about being perfect. So subtle ideas we want, okay? How do you accelerate? You enter the tube. How? You practice to be in the now. You follow as and when ready discussion, like we know how it works, all right? Of course, I determine the purpose of collective or organization. Important elements. Be in the now. Discard old known narratives. So it's really for me about get rid of these narratives and just sit there and wait. Explore new narratives. We need narratives to discuss things with ourselves here, right? We cannot go without them. But it's this story of being on top of them and not in them. Take guidance from your passion, that typically helps. Refrain from knowing masking yourself, putting masks on. Actively affirm others. All of these comes out of Corinthians, where Paul speaks to the Corinthians in terms of how I actually see him there as Zachariah, wanting them to teach how this principle work. Submit your understanding as a piece to the larger puzzle. Effort to be perfect is the enemy of the process. So my understanding really here is from Adam, what they did there in terms of covering themselves, it's now happening straight through. You can see it in everything. How this process actually works is you need to bring your brokenness. That's how it works, because that becomes the fuel. Celebrate humility as it's the fuel, unveiled identity for fusion. If you don't bring your brokenness, fusion is not going to happen. That's just how it works. It was a process designed by God for us, not for perfect people. So you don't have to worry about being perfect or, many people, and I'm saying this maybe now bluntly, we worry about grace and those type of things, but if we talk about grace the whole time, it means that we're still worried about not being perfect, right? The moment we stop talking about being, not having grace and that type of thing, it's the moment that we actually realize, I don't care about not being perfect. It's not the point, right? It's not the, exactly. It's done. I don't have to focus on that anymore. It's true, but I'm not stuck in that concept, okay? I moved out of it. I don't care if I bring, the broken self and I cannot speak this and that. That's just what I do. And the moment you do that, you get this release. And then you are in the now, for that matter. So what the supertube then does, it creates a fusion process that accelerates the ability to stay in the now. It's very difficult to stay in the now by yourself. You just get clobbered with concepts and narratives and fear. That's why these little groups are so important. In it, remove old models of reality, discover current models of reality. It's a continuous process. So we live in the now with no narratives, plus we take the supertubes, which cause fusion, give us the blueprint. So yeah, basically then Haggai plus Zachariah is blueprint, if I can say it like this, right? Realize the blueprint. So a typical process, I don't, what I take them through is causal layer analysis is a way that we capture the past and the future mindset. So I go through a process, okay, how do we think the collective is right now? And then I talk to you in terms of how do you think it should be? But in that moment, the way it should be will also speak to the current mindset, right? Although they're thinking it's now, because it's typically still in the narrative, right? Then we go through the supertube, and then it's, okay, what's the new one now? And then we show the difference between the two. So this is how it looks now, okay? So how that would work, causal analysis, typically, we look at what's the facts. How does the world work? What's the headline news here? How does it look on the surface? Many people are just focused on this. So typically here is the unquestioned view of reality, right? Water shortage. So here's an example. Water shortages are likely, okay? Then below that is the system. What makes you think that particular thing? The system is social system structure informing reality. So there are systems that you cannot really see that creates the specific reality that you can see, right? Now political and economical and those type of systems create the reality on the ground right now. That's what they do, okay? So there is an example. If only government would manage water better, there would be no shortage, okay? That's the systems that now informs that. Then we talk the worldview is what truths inform the system. So it's a deeper unconsciously held assumption. So the assumption is we need a left-green water system, not a market system. So you can see, because this is my worldview, I don't like the market capitalistic system. We need a green system. And now I look at my reality, now I'm going to see to the, governmental, you don't do what you need to do, water shortages are likely. It runs from the bottom up. And then on the bottom is the unconscious emotional narratives about reality. And here we say God gave earth to man to do as he wishes. So on the bottom, I decide that, this thing has been given to me, I can do what I want. Therefore, I decide, well, I don't want a market system, I want a green system. And because of that, you guys don't know what you're doing. You need to manage it better. And because you don't manage it better, water shortages are likely. So it comes from the bottom up, right? So what I typically then do with them is I define this now and how it should be. We've just done it once. I'll show you quickly an example. Benefits and inputs, I just gave to them in terms of your time, energy, exposure, weakness, because that's what's going to happen. And their benefits is about identity, right? For the individuals also, and for the collective. And then you start unlocking new initiatives based on this, okay? And here's the typical process I will follow, but I want to, instead of doing this is now just, I want to show you what we came up with for the first example. So this is the one for Lazonia, okay? So the existing Lazonia and the new Lazonia. This was before the supertube. So Lazonia is out of control. Crime, mining, development, blame each other, lots of noise on the surface, right? That's the reality. Fragmented systems, lack of enforcement, lack to be in the know, ignorance of boundaries, or there's many boundaries, if the ignorance to be in the know. The worldview was it's free for all. You basically move out of the city, you come and stay in Lasagna, it's a plot community, all right? You come here, you do what you want, all right? It's about me. Lasagna has no character or template to be. That's what they believe, how can I say, the myth maybe should be here, all right? Now they say, okay, but how else should it be? Just the opposite. Beautiful nature, quiet, preferred place to be, horses, people, children in the street, nice community, clever use of technology, economic and social feasibility system for the individual to make a living, education enforcement systems. Of course, that needs to be there. You can see now the people need to be educated, and it must be enforcement system because these guys, it must be enforcement system, education system, because these guys think they can do what they want. All right? Has to be there. But that doesn't mean it's the answer. That's not the blueprint identity of this community, right? Appreciate others in nature, contribution and character, to be a sense of place, to have common subscription to a vision. All right? So they want everyone to buy into something and say, well, this is how it looks here, this is the character of the place, and you need to, follow this. All right? That's what they believe. So then we went through the super tube. And these people don't know, they don't know the tabernacle, they don't know nothing of that. I just tell them, this is the story, this is what we're going to do, just be in the now. And this is more or less how you are in the now. And it's not going to be perfect, and we follow this process. It's like an experiment now to see what happens. And eventually, what is the current identity? So those are our focus. What is the current identity of Lasagna? Why is Lasagna in existence? What is the calling of Lasagna? So I'm pursuing this identity of Lasagna. What is it? We need to do it here, and we can later on do it with more groups in Lasagna. And if this process is the truth, we will discover other facets of the identity, right? Supposedly that's how it should work, right? So the community of Lasagna affects healing and regeneration. It's also protect truthful order of how it should be. But that healing is about finding the correct order, about how things should be. So if you heal someone, it's about you putting to the original state how it was meant to be. So there was this whole thing about Lasagna. In the Anglo-Boer War, it was apparently a place that there was a tented hospital camp there. And all of these things about healing came out of different, places. And this guy says this, he feels regeneration, but they don't make the connections yet because they don't, and that's why you have a Zachariah that sort of must know his identity, that works the altar, if I can say it like this, right? It's not because that guy needs to be in the now, and he needs to make the links, and he needs to pull the whole thing together. Otherwise, it's not going to work, right? So they don't know this, and they don't know what to look for. So then you slowly start pulling out these different links and say, but do you see, okay, we said many things, but do you see the common thread here is about healing? It's all of this process here. Can you see? And eventually I started this back to them and said, listen, do you agree that what we discussed here is now, is this is what the identity is? And they all agreed. That's what it is. Right? So now you can do, while we go through a process, let me just skip this, I want to show you just so we haven't done this yet, but, well, we've done it, but now what you would do is, this is what it was before, right? It was a sense of place. You remember that? That's what they thought there. And now it's a community that affects healing, regeneration, also protect. Now you need to build this thing up. How should Lasagna work? Based on that identity, based on that belief, that metaphor. But now I've realized, this is new for me now, right? I've realized a few things, and there is now a hesitancy. It's like you discovered your own identity in the beginning. What do you do with this now? What is it? How do I affect this? How does it play out? So, in effect, to determine, the systems, for example, let's not forget, these can be semantics and those type of things, but let's say the systems, but the godly systems that they should be. So, what we should do now, and I suggested that to them, is actually take the super tube again in terms of what does the systems look like here, right? Because we don't want to start now thinking, okay, what was the old systems? Okay, let's tweak it a little bit and see. That's not how it works. So my understanding here is in everything that you're going to do and design and develop from now on in this new epoch is going to be the University of the South, where you have Sagaria and Haggai being in the now and bring identity, and those two run together, and you remove all other realities, narratives, right? That's the way it works. We have a little bit more time. So I just wanted a few concepts that I want to link. So we talked about, so hierdie kan ek nou Afrikaans praat, sal ek nou maar oor gaan Afrikaans doen. So manier van dink wat ons nou gesê, is nie net nog 'n narrative nie, 'n moral of reality nie. Die manier van dink is om te verstaan dat om enigiets op te los is om in die nou te wees en binne in die wiel so te operate en die proses te vertrou dat dit gaan uitkom na iets wat goddelik is en die identiteit van die nuwe tempel dan bou. Dis wat dit is. Dis die enigste manier wat ek kan verstaan nou hoe ons al hierdie verskillende agtergronde en kulture en whatever dit is op sy kan skuif. Dit is nie 'n common ground in my opinie tussen jou manier van dink en my manier van dink. Jy skuif alles uit die pad uit en sê ons volg nou hierdie proses en kyk waar kom ons uit.
Dis die one of mind om one of language dan.
Yes. Presies. Die skeidsmuur wat ek nou begin verstaan is daai ding wat jy maak 'n skeidsmuur as jy 'n moral of reality joune saambring. Dan sit jy die skeidsmuur daar neer. So ek wil al hierdie links maak. Vrees van die Here vir my is om in die nou te leef binne in daai groep. Dis die vrees van die Here. Soos die spreek wat ons nou nog gesê het. Babylon, dit is nou gesê, Babylon is al hierdie konsepte en models of reality. So jy sit in een van hulle vas. Die enigste pad uit is om in die nou te wees en binne in 'n groepie te klim. That's the only way. Julle is die sout. En daar wat ek presies wil sê, wat ek die relate met julle is die sout, jou gebrokenheid is die offer. Dit is vir my so amazing dat dan ons dink heeltyd ons moet hierdie ding doen, verbeter. Maar God sê, luister, ek het die proses presies vir jou ontwerp. Bring jou gebrokenheid. Net daar in die nou, that's it. Want dit is die fuel vir die proses. Ek brand dit. Okay? Daai taal wat ons praat is in my opinie net in die nou. Hierdie nuwe taal. En is eintlik ek het hier geskryf die taal van die eposwoorde. Onthou jy ek het 'n gesprek gehad en ons kan ook later, maar dit is hierdie ongesproke taal van die eposwoorde wat ons in mekaar bind. Okay? Vlees het nie vatplek in die nou nie. Die groot vyand van hierdie proses is om perfek te wees. So my verstaan van die ding is jy bring jou gebroke self, jy submit dit in hierdie universiteit van die of Sagaria en Haggai proses. Jy gaan deur die tonnel en dan ewe skielik sien jy ek is verander. Jy het nie beheer oor hoe die ding verander word nie. Exactly, and it's not up to you. Ja, dit is nie vir jou nie. Om jou beter te maak is nie vir jou nie. As amper so kan sê. Jy moet net in die vrees van die Here in die proses commit. Dan sal jy sien hoe jy verander is na die tyd. As ek dit so kan stel. Want die oomblik as jy jouself wil verbeter, dan klim jy in 'n moral of reality in. Dan is jy nou weer stuck in Babylon. Dan sit jy daar in Babylon en dis nou waar jy sit. En niks vorder nie, want jy's daar.
Because God is not in the self-improvement business.
Ja,
He's not.
exactly. Ja, presies, ek is. Die bome in die woud wat brand en wat is. Die oomblik as jy buite die nou is, dan oordeel jy. Want jy het 'n spesifieke posisie ingeneem. As jy in 'n spesifieke moral of reality gaan klim, dan het jy 'n posisie. Die oomblik jy posisie, dan sit teen daai posisie en dan oordeel jy mos nou. Ek het gepraat oor die versoening in my verstaan wat net in die nou is. Waar jy onthou is net in die nou of in vandag. En daar jy spesifiek gesê, Sagaria spesifiek roep dan eenheid deur hierdie meganisme, reg?
Ja.
So hierdie meganisme is die meganisme waar ons sê kom ons vat Babylon weg, ons manier van dink weg. En deur hierdie nuwe goddelike proses wat nie een van ons weet wat gaan uitkom nie, volg ons dit. En ja, in my verstaan is ons moet dan redeneer, maar jy redeneer bo op hierdie nuwe konsepte wat nou hier arriveer. Om sin te maak vir jou nou hier wat moet gebeur. Maar dis 'n kontinue proses om hulle weg te skep. So kyk wat sien nuus? Okay, hulle is nou hier, right, ons gaan af. Okay, Agad het gepraat. That's it.